Hey guys, and welcome back. This is part 3 of the tutorial, the third and final part. This point onward, we're going to get to the end of the board, so this is like the most exciting part of the video. I hope you've enjoyed following along. I hope it's not been too boring. A lot of questions about how I do this, how I do that, how I go about setting the board out, etc. I just thought it was easier to make this video. If the video's quite popular and people like it, I'll do more on the boards as I'm going, and like I said, I'll do different themes, so not just Lord of the Rings. I'll mainly be focusing on Lord of the Rings, to be fair, and Hobbit, but other boards I've got other games that I need to get played and get some terrain built for, so it'll be a fun little journey. But on to this. I think last time we touched bases, I just got the brown layer and the PVA layer down on the board. I've got the morning off this morning, and whilst part 2's uploading to YouTube, I decided just to get a little bit of detail. I'll start on the detailing anyway. So detailing, it's just the little touches that really finish off a board, and they sort of bring it to life, and it changes it from being a slab of foam with some paint on it and turning it into, you know, a chunk of Middle Earth or a chunk of futuristic planets on 40k or whatever it is that you're doing. It really does finish the boards off. It's well worth taking the time just to add the tiniest little detail makes a massive difference. I've said it before, it still amazes me, and I know it will do on this board, even when it's completely finished and flocked and everything like that, and it looks good. As soon as I put trees on it, it's just like that final little touch just really finishes it off. So I'm really looking forward to getting it done. This morning what I've been doing, I've given the rocks and ruins another dry brush. They will have one more very light dry brush, maybe at some point today if I get time, and then I'll coat them in PVA again just to protect them, because the PVA, don't get me wrong, if you drop something heavy on the board and it lands on the foam rocks, it's going to damage them. They're easily repaired. PVA is not going to stop things like that, but it's the general day-to-day stuff like hands brushing past them, you know, touching them with models and things like that. PVA is just a nice protective, harder layer on the outside. So detailing, what I've done, I've used some PVA, and I've had to break into the arty cupboard, the kids' arty cupboard, and steal some of their PVA because I've run out. I need to go to the builder's yard today, so I'll pick up some PVA and I'll replace the kids' PVA. So I use PVA, I use gravel, which you can see, oh, dropping it everywhere, you see it there? And basically that's all different sized gravel, get different sizes, and where I get that from is, well, there's two places in Manchester. There's B&M Bargains, which I think is everywhere, and there's a place called, oh, what's it called? The Range, that's it. They're just round the corner from me, and they're like sort of bargain basement type places. They do all sorts, household. The gravel is aquarium gravel. You can also get birdseed gravel, which is like a fine sand with crushed oyster shells, I think it is, in it, and that's quite nice. I use that sometimes. I use that for my boards and for basing my models, so it's really handy. And I also use this stuff, which I don't know how well it's going to come up on camera. You see, it's basically crushed slate, fine slate, and you can buy this in bags. If you search crushed slate on eBay, you'll find it. But it's not expensive. But if you want to save more money, you can get it for next to nothing by basically getting some slate tiles from a builder's yard for a couple of £, putting them in a container like a rubble bucket or something like that, and smashing them up into tiny pieces. What I tend to do sometimes when I do that, I'll break them up. I'll use the bigger pieces for terrain, I'll use the small sort of pound coin sized stuff for basing models, the bits of slate, and then what you have left in the bucket is, it's not a dust and it's a bit finer than a gravel, but it's really coarse, so it's not like sand where, you know, if it's so fine it'll stay smooth. It's got a bit of texture to it and it's nice, and it's what I put in my filler and my mixer when I'm blending stuff in and I want to texture the board. So I use that. There's other stuff, you can use anything you want, whatever you're using at the minute, grit sand, anything. So that's what I'm using on this board. I'm not going to do all the pieces like the rocky outcrops, the ruins and things like that, and as you can probably see, some little pathways that I've made. Where they're all them bits and bobs are going to be, I put PVA, so I put PVA all around the rocky outcrops, all around the ruins. I draw the path shape in PVA first, just basically drip it on, draw it on, and then get an old brush, spread it out a little bit. Brush can be wet, so you can wet your PVA, it just stops it getting tacky too quick. If you're doing quite a large area, it'll start to dry, and then when you pour your gravel on, it won't stick. So I use a wet brush, just keep wetting it, not too wet so it's dripping everywhere, just nice and damp. Spread out the PVA. I then go in, just use little containers to get some of the material in. So I've got the coarser, the biggest gravel that I'm going to use of the aquarium gravel, and I go around the bottom of the rocky outcrops, just sprinkling it on. Don't go mad, because there's only so much that's going to stick to the PVA anyway, and if you put loads on, it's just going to come off. If you want to sort of level it where you've got, you know, maybe 1/2 inch piled high boulders, what you need to do is do it in layers. So do your first layer, let it dry, put more PVA across the top, your second layer, and so on and so forth. If you try and do it all in one, it won't work. It'll just fall down because the PVA will just drip through. So yeah, so I get a container, just sprinkle it all around the bottom on the PVA. I then get my finer slate gravel and go around that again. It just adds a bit of depth to it, and it doesn't look. I used to just use the thicker gravel just around them when I was feeling lazy basically, and it looks alright, but having different sizes of the boulders and rubble and things like that, it just makes it look more realistic. Round the ruins, I didn't use the thicker stuff, I just used the finer stuff because I want the detail of the ruin to shine through. I don't want to sort of just have a bit of ruin buried in some thick gravel. And that's it really. As you can see, it's starting to take shape. You've got the beach colour there, which I painted that on because it's a fine. The texture on the board is quite coarse, but obviously the beach is going to be sand, so I want that to be smoother. So I use, you can make your own with paint and fine sand or play sand, but I had a tub of Vallejo sand effect paint. And it's basically the same stuff. It's a thick paint with fine sand in, and I'm able to paint over that, and it will take away the texture, which it has done, and it's got a smoother sandy texture. I mean, it's the same colour as sand, but that's not how it's going to stay. I'm going to paint that. It just so happens to be the colour of sand, but I do need to paint that. And just dry brushes, one light wash and dry brushes for sand. That's what I always do, and that's it. Yeah, so I've put the path in using the fine slate sand. And we're on to the next stage now, so I'm going to wait for that to dry. We're going to do one more dry brush, seal it, and then we're going to start putting the flock on. And the last thing that we'll do is the water effects. So the next time you see me, we'll be flocking. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so I've started flocking today. I forgot to get the camera rolling when I started, so I've made a start on this corner on the hill so you can see where I've started to flock. This board, if I'm going off the movies, has kind of a really lush feel to it, but then with fallen leaves, dead bracken and things like that over the lush green. So the base is going to be nice luscious green, and then as you can, I don't know if the camera will pick that up, there are some scatter leaves in yellows, reds, oranges and things like that. There is also going to be like I say, some browns like bracken, which I'm going to use over the top, but I'm going to do that on the second layer when I'm resealing it with the PVA. I do that because I want it to be a layer. I don't want all the flock and leaves and the bits of bracken just to mix in and become clumps of mess. So normally I will do it in separate layers. I'll show you how I do the flocking, and we'll come to that at a later date. So what I have is some different colour flocks. I start with a very dark, and I start going lighter through the light greens into browns, and eventually into, I've got like it's a yellow grass, and then I have what's called a green blend. These are all woodland scenics. There's a lot of firms that supply flock, and I use different. It just so happens that I've got Woodland Scenics in stock, and that's what I'm using. But yeah, I think there's Jarvis and things like that. They all do similar stuff. The Woodland Scenics stuff is very, very nice to use, probably easier, and it comes in these shaker bottles. So the lid is like a pepper pot on one side, or it's totally open on the other for you to scoop out and get large amounts and what you need. So they are handy because you can just grab them and use them straight off. The other thing that I use, the Jarvis stuff, comes in bags. So I basically made similar things for my Jarvis stuff. I stole the idea from Mel, the terrain tutor. I've seen him using them. And these old coffee tins, and then he's punched holes in the lid, fills it with flock, and away you go. You can have one side where the holes are bigger and one side where the holes are smaller, for depending how much flock you want out. So, on to how I flock. And if you've watched any videos on YouTube, it's pretty much all the same technique. You use watered down PVA. I've got, it's slightly thinner than a 50-50, I'd say it's 60% water, 40% PVA. The reason I do that is I like to do it in larger areas, and I don't want it to start drying before I've finished. So you've got your PVA mix, an old paintbrush, that's what you need. You've got your flocks, and then you need a spray bottle with a slightly weaker than 50-50, so it's weaker than that even, and only add a little bit more water. Use that mix and add a little bit more water so I can get a fine spray. If you have it thicker, it won't spray, it'll just squirt out and drip out. But I'll show you that in a minute. So, where we're up to here, everything's been undercoated. As you can see, that probably wasn't in the last video. I've made a ruin at the bottom of the hill. I got carried away watching the movie and just thought it'd look cool, so I've done it. I'll do a tutorial on how to make ruins. I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory. I think I've done a couple. But I can do it again, it's not a problem if you want to see it. I've undercoated black all the areas where I've put the gravel and the stonework, so the paths around the bases of all the hills. I've done that, so that's all done. What I tend to do, you could colour them now, so you could put your browns on and highlight up to a light cream and do your small rock formations now. I don't do it that way, I do it once the grass is on. There's no particular reason for it, that's just how I do it. But yeah, so we'll crack on with getting some flock on. What I will do is I'll show you how I flock and why I flock the way that I flock. It's not going to be too dissimilar to anyone else on YouTube who's flocking. And I don't just use one colour, obviously there's quite a lot of colours there. So I'll get my mix, I'll explain as I'm going what I'm doing. So I'll get my mix, basically I get it on, and you want the PVA to saturate everywhere where you want the flock to be. Obviously things like this where you're on a hill, you've got to be careful, you don't want to slap loads of it on the hill because it starts just dripping over the edges. You just want a nice layer. Yeah, make sure you get right in there on the base of the hill where the hill meets the normal ground level. I'll just do this corner of the board as a demonstration, and then I'll do the rest of the board off camera because it would be quite boring otherwise. So we do that corner of the board. Yeah, you can't put too much on, you don't really want it pooling, and if you do get pools, just spread it out, don't worry too much. But even if it pools, it's not the end of the world, don't worry about it. So you've got your layer of PVA on. I get my darkest green, this is my base colour. The way to do this is to think about when the same way that you'd paint a model. So you'd start with your darker colour and highlight up. It's one of the first things you learn when you start painting minis, I suppose. And it's the same sort of technique. Basically we're painting this board with flock. So get it on the sprinkler. What you want to do is just want to this above the board and just shake. Now when you're doing it, the temptation is to start squeezing the bottle and pumping flock out, because it doesn't look like, because as soon as this flock, it's so fine, hits that PVA, it soaks up and it's hard to see the coverage, but when it dries it will all lighten. Yeah, so sometimes it won't look like you've got enough on, but you have, don't worry, and we've got another 2 or 3 layers to go on yet as well. So you just want a light dusting of the dark green, that's your base colour, and then I just start highlighting up. So obviously thinking back to when you're painting, this is a higher area, so I want this to be quite lush. So I'm going to get some of that on there, and then I'm just going to be sporadic. Yeah, so just little bits everywhere. Make sure you get right in against the upstands here. And then again, we're going to go to a lighter colour, and we're just going to carry on doing what we've been doing. Yeah, get to the top of the hill, make sure you get up there. There's not a lot coming out, but as you can see, as you start layering it, it's starting to thicken up. There's only small amounts coming out. These, I've used these, I think, for, how many boards have I done? 1, 2, 3, 6 boards. Some of them are still full. You just only need a little bit, don't go mad. And then I go up to my lightest, which is called yellow grass in this case. You know, you don't necessarily have to use this recipe. Get some different colour flocks and for different boards and feels you'd want. So if it's like a bit more arid, you've got to use a lot more of the lighter colours, and then obviously like the darker greens and the deeper greens are for your lush sort of countryside boards. But yeah, so lighter colours. Again, we're highlighting, so I want this at the top of this hill in the corner, and then there's just going to be patches where you can't, it's not really going to pick it up on camera, but if you remember at the beginning of, I think it was video 1, before I did anything, well, as soon as I stuck the foam down I got a heat gun, and there's all that little indentations in the board, and it's up and down to the higher points is where this is going to be focused. So more there, and this is quite stark, yeah, it's quite scary when this comes out because it's so yellow, but don't worry, just stick to what I said, don't go mad. Yeah, it's a little peak there and a peak there. Don't go mad with it. Don't squeeze the bottle as you're shaking it. Just very lightly shake it. That does not look like that. I don't know if that's the camera's picking that up. Yeah. The last layer you put on is going to be the thing that sort of strikes you. So what we now want to do is blend that back down and blend them all in together. And this is like putting, again, painting a glaze on over the top to blend everything in together. And what I use for that, it's basically called blended turf, and it's a mix. The camera might be able to pick that up. I don't know how well it's picking up the grains. There's a mix of dark greens, light greens, browns, yellows. I'm going to put this over the entirety of that, but a very thin layer, because I don't want to go over the entirety, otherwise it's just going to look like that and it's going to look very bland. I want to keep, as you can see, the highlights, the higher points lighter than the lower points. So the shaker bottle open, and we're just going to give the whole thing a dusting. I mean, I can see from here, like I said, I don't know how well it's picking up on the camera, straight away. Yeah, it just brings everything together. It looks lovely. And again, I'm using next to nothing. It's a fine dust coming out. Over there. And again, it's trial and error. You know, you take a step back, you look at it, and away you go. So that's now done. That's all blended. That's all my flocks on. Now what will happen is, because my PVA is so thin, the flock will soak that up, and the flock will become nice and stuck, and it will become harder. It stops being soft. But if you leave it like that, 2-3 games in, it's all going to end up just rubbing off. This is where your sprayer comes on. You need to spray the whole lot, but don't be tempted to get in there and start spraying that far away from the board, because the power of the spray coming out is just going to move all that. That weighs nothing. Yeah, it's dust. So the way I do it is I spray over the top and let the PVA settle. So basically like that. So I was just spraying it over and just letting it drop on. And what you want, like I said before, you don't want to saturate with your brush. If this saturates, it's fine. You don't want it to the point where, like on the hill, there's that much that everything's washing off, but you want a nice good coating of PVA. And what will happen is that all that flock will set nice and hard. And whilst that's wet and you've got quite a bit on there, what I then do is come in with this. You can buy this on eBay. I can't remember what the seeds are called. I'll dig it out. I'll put it somewhere on the screen now. The name of it, I can't remember for the life of me what the seeds are called. But this is actual. They're from seed pods, and they just look like little oak leaves and things like that. And because there's going to be trees all over this board, I don't know if you can see them on here.
Just really makes it more realistic. And these, 100% less is more with these. Don't go mad. You just want a sprinkling. Yeah. You don't want it to look like a trifle with hundreds and thousands on top. You just want a spattering. That's enough. Literally a pinch has just done that corner. So a bag like that for me, that'll probably, if I was to do these en masse, that would probably do me what, 20 boards, easy. And that's it. From there, what I'd do, I'll put some on, even though I wasn't going to, just to sort of show. I don't know if you can see down here on the bottom of the rock face, I've got some like little bushes and shrubbery and stuff. What I use for that is clump foliage. Yeah, you see that? It's basically coloured sponge. That's all it is. So use that as clump foliage. Again, it comes in set colours. So I've got dark green, a medium green, and a light green. When I'm doing boards, I do a little tub like this and I mix it all up, because if you use just one colour, it looks too uniform. It doesn't look natural, I don't think, anyway. And you want to apply this with neat PVA. So in here I've got some neat PVA. What I'll do is I'll just put some just along this edge, along this upstand. That might look quite cool. Just run a line of neat PVA there. Yeah. The lid back up. And all you're doing, you're grabbing your club and you're sticking it in. This can be a bit of a pig to get to stick, because it's a sponge and that's the way it is. You'll push it in and then you'll see it like coming off again. And because the PVA is neat, it won't suck up in the sponge. So the reason you use neat is because you want it to hold in place. That's when this comes back into play. That sponge will now soak that up because it's almost as thin as water, and they'll become hard and stuck. And I'm not saying they'll never fall off, but as long as you don't mistreat them, they'll be fine. And basically that's why I flock. That's how I'm going to flock this board. The darker, more so autumnal style boards, I'll do a video on how I flock that when I come around to doing them. But that's it. One thing I would say, just upkeep really of your equipment and your tools that you're using. When you finish doing this, take the lid off. Yeah, that's fine to leave in there on a shelf somewhere. That's almost like water, it's not going to go anywhere. I've got an old dishwasher tub there full of, it's got water with a touch of washing up liquid in it. Whenever I'm using the brushes to paint and things like that, or like the PVA brush, I chuck it in there, let them soak, give them a clean, and then I take them in the house and clean them properly. With this, just go into the water and spray some normal water through it, pop it in, spray it under, submerge in the water, and it'll stop PVA build up. Otherwise you're just going to go through loads of these, loads and loads. When I first started building boards, I think I bought a bag of 50 of these, just these without the bottles. And they were one use and throw them away, but obviously that's not cost effective. I know they're only a couple of quid, but you know, you can keep using it, save money. But that's it. I'll get the camera in a second, I'll do some close-ups of that flock, and then off camera I'll finish the board with the flocking, and then we're going to come back to more detailing on the board, getting the paths done, doing the ruin and things like that. So I'll see you in a second. So here we are, just some close-ups, just to give you an idea of the look that we're going for. You know, I think anyway, it does look realistic. You know, if you look at grass, if you look at any, you know, photographs of, you know, the countryside and things like that, or if you're lucky enough to live in the countryside, and if you look out, this one still looks a bit light because of the PVA. PVA, obviously, as you guys know, is white and it dries clear, so them sort of cloudy patches will set to be more this colour. So this is nice and lush. And as I was saying, yeah, if you look at, you know, your natural surroundings of grass, you know, it isn't all just one uniform colour. There's different shades in there for multiple reasons, and we just want to try and emulate that really. And I think the leaves look great. Once all the trees are on there as well, you know, and it looks like all the leaves have come from the trees, etc. Because I want this to be quite dense with trees. Obviously you need to leave enough space to gain. You don't want the trees to get in the way, but at the same time, if you want it to sort of look like it did in the film, you know, that scene, you know, it is a wood that they're in. There's lots and lots of trees, so you know there would be lots and lots of scatter. We've got all the browns to go on yet, so I'm going to finish flocking this board, and we'll start putting the browns on, and then we'll just start picking things out in the detail. You know, just start to make things. Everything's just had a really rough dry brush, the paths and things like that. That room's not really been touched yet, so we'll get on to that later on. This was, like I mentioned before, was going to be 3 parts long, but it's now going to be 4. There's just too much to cram in, and I don't want to rush through things. I'm hoping that I'm explaining things well. This is quite tough to film, but yeah, we'll get there. So yeah, keep on watching, guys, and I'll see you shortly.